My name is Harpriya, sir.
Today is the second class. You keep your video on. Okay. First of all, I request all the students to mute yourself. Please, all students mute yourself. And today we'll be going to a second class by Professor Nagamune Garu. And all the proceedings being been recorded. And all the records will be available on YouTube and also on Facebook. And Dr. Harish and Dr. Roger Ramani is taking the keen interest and they're doing all the technical aspects. Again, I said already, attendance is very must. Today, out of 222 to 225 students, only 159 have been online. We have the facility for 500 links. I request all students to utilize this facility and come online. I'm thankful to again our Lord Principal Garu, Dr. Jay Bhaskar, who is taking keen interest in conducting these online classes. Special thanks to Dr. Harish, who is instrumental technically to make this all classes in a video recorded and developing our departmental e-library also. Any doubts after the 30 minutes class, you can come on the chat or on video and put your queries. So I request Professor Nagamune Garu to take over the class where you stopped yesterday. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday we have discussed something about anatomy and the congenital anomalies of the testis, that is undescended testis, how to manage that. Today we are going to discuss about the acquired disease of the testis. The important one, though rare, is injuries to the testis. Though testis hangs down, lower down in the scrotum and between the two powerful thighs, it is well protected from trauma. Though it is well protected, sometimes the blunt injury as well as the penetrating injuries do occur in the testes, damaging the testis. The pattern of these injuries which are received by the testis can be very simple or can be very detrimental to the survival of the testis. It can be a simple bruising, that is a little hematoma in the substance of the testis with intact tunica albuginea, or it can be a large intratesticular hematoma where the tunica is intact. If the tunica is intact, nothing to worry, nothing need to be done. Simple analgesics and antibiotics will resolve these hematomas. And when the tunica albuginea is ruptured, then you have to intervene surgically. Rupture of the tunica albuginea can lead to bleeding into the tunica vaginalis, the sac, where the fluid collection hydrocele. Now the blood will collect there, leading to what is called as hematocele. And if the parietal layer of the tunica vaginalis also ruptures, the blood will track into the layers of the scrotum. From there, it can extend into the groin, into the lower abdomen, all over the thighs, etc. So when the tunica albuginea has ruptured, then there is a very need to resuture it after clearing the hematoma, and surgical intervention is needed. How to know whether the tunica is ruptured or intact? Apart from clinical examination, ultrasound is very helpful. It will tell you, it will reveal the torn tunica albuginea. You can see the rent in the tunica albuginea by ultrasound examination. Whenever you find it, you need surgical exploration. So you have to open the scrotum, bring it out, clear all the hematoma, and you can suture the tunica albuginea. If the testis is very much damaged, ruptured, crushed, there is no hope of survival, then we may have to resort to archirectomy, removal of the testis. And you can assure the patient that he can have a testicular implant made of silicone later on for the cosmetic appearance. The testicular tumors, the testicular trauma is rare. It is very important to investigate and do the necessary thing for survival of the salvage of the testis. Another type of trauma, chronic trauma or minor trauma, is also there. So in a case of hematocele, old clot hematocele, a huge hydrocele is there for a long time. With minor trauma also, the hydrocele converting. So this blood gets clotted. Apart from minor discomfort, patient will not be having the classical features of hematocele, pain, etc. So he will not turn up to the hospital. So in such cases, the blood forms a clot and slowly, gradually it compresses the testis. Atrophy, pressure atrophy of the testis. Later on, when the patient presents to you, there will be a huge mass of the scrotum. The testis cannot be discerned separately. It will be rather a firm to hard consistency. When you explore it, you find part in the tunica vaginalis. Sometimes you may not find the testis separate. It will be compressed, pressed to one side of the wall of the sac. So you cannot identify and preserve the testis. The best option is archirectomy. Such types of cases we usually see in elderly people. So there is nothing to worry about it. You can do the archirectomy. And another interesting type of trauma usually seen in children is traumatic displacement of the testis. So in children, usually the cremasteric reflex is powerful. As the child observes that his lower abdomen is being hit, so all his abdominals will contract along with it. The cremaster also contracts powerfully, so that it pulls the testis up. So the testis goes usually into the superficial inguinal pouch, which is one of the sites of the ectopic testis. There it gets lodged with an account. It remains there because of the formation of some adhesions and some inflammation, etc. So this is called a traumatic displacement. This forms a differential diagnosis for the ectopic testis in children. So old clot hematocele occurs in elderly people. Traumatic displacement occurs in children where the cremasteric reflex is very powerful. So there are two important muscles in this region which has got a lot of physiological importance. One is the cremaster, which always tries to protect the testis from trauma. Whenever there is something is there, it pulls the testis close to the abdomen, close to the external ring, and try to protect. Another muscle is in the wall of the scrotum, the Darter's muscle, which has got a thermostatic function. Thermostatic function means it maintains the temperature of the testis. So these are the two important, those small muscles, they are very important for the survival and function of the testis. Now we'll go to another important topic, an emergency of the testis, the torsion of the testis. Torsion means twisting, where the twist occurs. It occurs not on the testis, but occurs on the spermatic cord, which carries the blood supply to the testis and carries the veins of the testis and lymphatics of the testis, gets twisted, causing obstruction to the blood flow to the testis. And secondarily, the testis gets involved in ischemia. So this is an emergency procedure. We have to diagnose it as early as possible and do the surgery as early as possible, or untwist the cord as early as possible to safeguard the testis. If time lapses, the testis dies and becomes gangrenous, and whatever you do afterwards, it is useless. So it is a time-sensitive disease. Time-sensitive disease needs more urgent care. In this picture, you can see on the right side, on the left side is normal. You can see the Pampiniform plexus and testicular artery, which are present normally in the spermatic cord, supplying the testis. The color of the testis is normal. Whereas here, you can see the spring-like convolutions of the spermatic cord, and the testis has become pale because blood supply to the testis has been hampered, so the testis has become pale. So you can see the normal picture as well as the twisting of the cord, which is called as torsion of the testis. Torsion of the testis. So this is an operative picture where we have operated in our hospital. This is, you can obviously see the twisting of the spermatic. Veins also on the testes, which have become thrombosed. The veins of the testes have become thrombosed, and there is congestion of the epididymis also. Congestion of the epididymis also. So what is this torsion of the testis? It is a condition whereby the testis twists in such a way that its blood supply becomes compromised. It is, again I say, it is a time-sensitive process. You must act as quickly as possible. Whenever you doubt the presence of the torsion, immediately you have to do something for untwisting of the cord. Don't wait for somebody to come, don't wait for the investigation, don't wait for the X-rays, etc. They are all time-consuming processes. No need, immediately you have to take the boy to the theater and open up the scrotum and untwist the testis to safeguard it. Torsion is nothing but the twisting. So in the initial stages, when the turn is one round, 360 degrees, only the veins gets blocked, leading to congestion of the testes. And when 2 rounds has occurred, 720 degrees, the arteries are also blocked, leading to ischemia and gangrene of the testis. So earlier the surgery, better the result. So, and salvage rates, depending on the time, if you can untwist the cord within 6 hours, the survival and safeguarding of the testis will be 100%. After 24 hours, it is only 20%. So if you operate after 24 hours, the chances of the survival is only 1/5 of the normal. So you have to act as early as possible. The mechanism of twisting. So can you imagine the normal testis can get torsion? Though the normal testis is also hanging down from its stalk, that is the spermatic cord. Spermatic cord will be coming with the abdomen. The end of it, you have got the seed or the testis hanging down. So you can expect the normal testis also to twist easily because it is hanging down from the abdomen. But it does not happen because, so if you have observed, you have seen a hydrocele surgery, when we separate the layers of the scrotum, we can easily separate them anteriorly and laterally. As we go posterior to the hydrocele sac, we feel some difficulty. So into these layers of the scrotum will be densely adherent to the posterior aspect of this tunica vaginalis sac. That is because the gubernaculum, which pulls down the testes, is present there, fixing the tunica vaginalis to the posterior layers of the scrotum. So posteriorly, the tunica vaginalis is adherent to the tissues. So it fixes the tunica and the testes, prevents them from twisting. So if this is not there, if the gubernacle is not present, and the testis is freely hanging down, there is every chance of twisting of the cord. So normal testis is well anchored posteriorly, so it is protected from the torsion. For the torsion to occur, there must be some anatomical abnormality must be there. So the torsion needs predisposing anatomical abnormality. Second one is the driving force. Third one is the precipitating event. When these three things are there, then the testis and the cord gets torted, they get twisted. What are these abnormalities? The first one is inversion of the testis. This is the most common cause. If you remember the anatomy of the testis will be vertically oval. Posterior to it you have got the attached to the testis, posteriorly you have got the again vertically oval narrow epididymis. Behind the epididymis you have got the vertically running vas deferens will be there. That is the anatomy. So if the vas deferens is attached to the lowermost part of the epididymis, so testis is lying vertically. So if this is arrangement is not there, the testis can lie horizontally or it can get inverted also. That means the epididymal head will be down, the tail of the epididymis will be up, inverted or horizontal. So this is the most common abnormality which predisposes for torsion of the testis. Second one is high investment of the tunica vaginalis. So the tunica vaginalis will be closely adherent to the testis and epididymis. No free cord will be there within the tunica vaginalis. If this gets attached at a higher level, part of the spermatic cord, so there are chances of the torsion. So in this abnormality, testis hangs within tunica like a clapper in a. This is the tunica vaginalis sac, and this is the clapper with the testis freely hanging down. This freely hanging down clapper can move this way, that way, can rotate, can get twisted. So this is the second abnormality. Third one is separation of the epididymis from the body of the testis. Usually the epididymis will be closely attached to the testis at the head and at the tail of the epididymis. In the middle, at the body of the epididymis, you have got a cleft-like thing. It is called as sinus of the epididymis. That is the normal arrangement. So if this epididymis is separated from the testis, attached to it only by a narrow stalk, so then also it predisposes for the torsion of the testis. All these three abnormalities you can see in the pictures now. So this is a bell clapper model. This is normal arrangement where the layers are closely adherent to the cord and the testis. Here it is high invested. So the free part of the cord is there, which is bound to twist. The same thing. This is horizontal line. Instead of vertically oval, here the testis is horizontally oval. Then it can twist. The epididymis is separated from the testis, attached to it only by a small cord-like stalk. So this stalk can get twisted, leading to torsion of the testis. So these are the abnormalities anatomically which predisposes for the torsion of the testis. The second point is driving force. The driving force is the contraction of the cremasteric muscle. Contraction of the cremasteric muscle. So if you remember the anatomy of the cremasteric muscle, it is a part of the internal oblique muscle. The fibers come down from the lateral side, they are arranged in a spiral manner around the spermatic cord and the layers of the scrotum. Again, they ascend up and get fused with the medial part of the internal oblique muscle. So the disposition of the cremasteric muscle fibers are spirally arranged around the cord of the testis. So whenever they contract suddenly, the testis and the cord gets twisted. It will get twisted in the vertical axis. So the anatomical arrangement of the cremasteric muscle predisposes it for the torsion of the testis. So in this picture, you can see the direction of the muscle fiber. They come down from lateral side, again ascend on the medial side. So on either side, almost always the direction of the turn will be to the outside. This is in the midline. The midline, there also the midline. So whenever you are attempting for untwisting of the testis, the torsion of the testis, you must always rotate the testis gently towards the midline, inside. You have to rotate it inside because it is in torsion. It is always rotate outside. You have to reverse it towards the midline. So this way you have to rotate. The precipitating events. These are the events which initiate the contraction. Whenever the contracts suddenly and powerfully, the cremasteric muscle also suddenly with them. When it initiates the examples of such are straining on stool, in young adolescents spontaneously during sleep, but this is very rare. Testinal salvage. The survival of the testis depends on two T's. One is the twin and another one is the time. The two terms is more dangerous than 360 degrees. Single turn will block the veins, double turn will block the arteries also. Second T is the time since the incident. Within 6 hours, if you attend to patient and do something, the survival of the testis will be 100%. Afterwards, it depends on the luck of the patient. So more than 6 hours, it is always dangerous to the survival of the testis. So you have to act as quickly as possible. Usually, 10 or 25 years of age, only you can see them in infancy, in few cases. The patient says there is sudden agonizing pain in the groin and lower abdomen. So this is a sudden event. So the patient also complains of sudden agonizing pain in the groin and lower abdomen. So while examining the testis, I have said you about the testicular sensation. If we gently press the testis, the patient will feel a peculiar type of sensation will be felt by the patient. He cannot describe it, whether it is throbbing or burning or pricking, etc. But it is a peculiar thing, sickening sensation. So now here the testis is very much under pressure. Pressure in the testis will be more in torsion. So there will be agonizing pain, very severe type of pain in the groin and the lower abdomen present. Sometimes the boy may vomit also. Because of the severity of the pain, he may vomit. When you examine, it is easy to identify the fully torsion of the testis in fully descended testis. So this torsion can occur in testis in the scrotum, which is well descended, though anatomically abnormal. It can also occur in undescended testis. So undescended testis, when it is in the posterior abdominal wall or in the inguinal canal, if it gets torted, it is very difficult to diagnose clinically unless you explore it. But it is easy if you have a little common sense, you can easily identify the torsion when it is in the testis. So the testis will be high in the scrotum. It will be pulled up. Because of the twisting, the cord gets shortened, the testis gets pulled up. And if you feel the cord, you can feel the twisted cord in the scrotal sac. You can feel the twist or the rounds or the bulgings, you can easily feel them. And cremasteric reflex is lost. Already the cremasteric muscle is in spasm. Reflex cannot be elicited. So it is easy to diagnose the torsion of the tongue unless you remember it in acute scrotum. When the boy comes with acute pain in the scrotum, the first and foremost differential diagnosis is twisting of the cord, twisting of the testis or twisting of the cord must be entertained and ruled out. The complications, testicular infarction in neglected cases, it can gangrenostis can result in scrotal abscess, ganglion of the testis, recurrence, and chronic epididymitis can also occur. What is this recurrence? When the testis is gangrenous, why will you get again recurrence? So the meaning of this recurrence is there is one clinical condition called as intermittent torsion. Intermittent torsion. So in young adolescents, because of the hyperactive cremasteric reflex, the testis gets twisted spontaneously and gets untwisted spontaneously. The boy gets pain, there will be 3/4 turn or 1 turn. He takes some rest. When the muscle relaxes, again testis will come to the normal position. So there will be a history of intermittent pain in the scrotum. The cause for such thing is the intermittent twisting of the cord with cremasteric reflex. So if such history is there, you must carefully examine both the testes for anatomical abnormality and lie of the testis. See whether it is horizontal testis or inverted testis. If you find them, it is better to fix them up pre-operative before going for testing. That is the meaning of the recurrence, intermittent twisting or torsion of the testis. And chronic epididymitis. So testis is already lost, only the epididymis will be surviving. In such cases, it gets inflamed. Differential diagnosis, epididymoarthritis is the second most common cause of acute scrotum. Inflammatory signs will be present, evidence of urinary infection will be present. Torsion of the testicular appendage. So the symptoms are very similar to the torsion of the testis, but they are minimum. The testis is spared, only the testicular appendage is twisted. It's a minor problem. Bumps orchitis can cause some confusion, but it is often bilateral. Patient will be having history of fever for a week or so, and it occurs in epidemics. So there will be a number of cases of bumps will be present. So more circumstances will point to the mumps orchitis. Idiopathic scrotal edema. So here it is a bilateral phenomenon. Rapid onset of edema bilaterally and spontaneous disappearance of edema within 12 hours is the differentiating point. Strangulated inguinal hernia. This is one clinically interesting thing. In a small hernia which gets strangulated, which gets obstructed or strangulated in the external ring, it will compress the cord and leads to venous congestion, and there will be engorgement of the testes, etc., which causes confusion to the diagnosis. So the one point is both these conditions, hernia as well as the torsion, both require surgery. So at the earliest, you can explore the scrotum and deal with the problem. Management is determined on clinical grounds. Only on clinical grounds, there is no need for investigations. If you suspect clinically, act as quickly as possible. If you have, without wasting of the time, you have the facility for Doppler study, you can send the patient for Doppler study and see for the vascular flow in the testis and confirm a diagnosis. Doppler ultrasound will confirm ischemia of the affected testis, but it gives more false positive results. So it is not routinely recommended. If you have it, you do it. If you do not have it, don't bother. Decide on clinical ground and explore this topic. Exploration is performed through scrotal incision and see whether the testis is viable or not. If the testis is viable, you untwist the cord, wait for some time. If the testis regains its normal color, then you fix the testis and close the wound. If the testis do not recover after waiting for some time, you cover it with warm mops. You ask the anesthetist to give 100% oxygen, wait for some more time. Then if it recovers, you keep it aside. Otherwise, if it is already infarcted, you remove the testis, do archerectomy, and you can plan for implants later on. In delayed cases, that means 2 days, 3 days already over, the pain is already subsiding. In such cases, there is no urgency because already testis is dead. There is no urgency, but still you have to operate, not for the affected testis, but to fix the opposite testis. So you prepare the patient, take him up electively for surgery, then fix the testis on the opposite side, prevent it from the torsion in the future. So if there is lack of theater facilities, immediately cannot go there. In such circumstances, if the patient comes early, where there is not much edema, not much adhesions, in such cases, you can gently try the untwisting of the testis. Untwisting must be always gentle, untwisting towards the inwards, towards the midline. You have to turn the testis slowly. And if this is successful, it gives you some more time. It gives you time, then you can take the patient for the theater and fix the testis on both sides. It's only a time gaining process. Time gaining process. You have to operate and fix the testis on both sides. And the next topic is which involves the veins of the testis. Which is called as varicocele, which means the veins of the testis or veins of the cord has become varicose. Varicose vein is an elongated, dilated, tortuous vein. Vein anywhere in the body which is elongated, lengthened, which is dilated, increased in diameter, and which has become tortuous. Such veins are called as varicose veins. Usually you see varicose veins in the lower limb. You can see varicosities of the rectal veins. You can see varicosities of the esophageal veins. And also you can see varicosities of the spermatic cord also. So the varicosities of the pampiniform plexus is called as varicocele. Varicocele is a varicose dilation of the veins draining the testis. So this is a picture, very good picture. You can see on this side, you can see the normal pampiniform plexus. More and more veins are there, more than a dozen, close to the testis. As you go up, they fuse together with one another, the number becomes less. When you reach the internal ring, only 1 or 2 veins will be seen. Above, will become single and drain into the venous system. So on this side, obviously the veins are dilated. They are larger in size. These are called as the varicocele. Varicose. Surgical anatomy is a condition affecting the pampiniform plexus. Veins draining the testis and epididymis are called as pampiniform plexus. They gradually join each other in the inguinal canal, and 1 or 2 testicular veins will be present in the retroperitoneum. The left vein drains into the left renal vein, the right vein drains into the inferior vena cava. So as you go up, they become 1 or 2 genital veins. They go and drain into the left renal vein and the inferior vena cava. In this picture, you can see clearly. On the left side, the vein is going and ending in the left renal vein. The right side, it is ending in the inferior vena cava at this level. And these testicular veins have got the valves at their terminations, where they join the vena cava, where they join the left renal vein. They have got a terminal valve. If this valve is absent, if this valve is incompetent, then the person develops the varicocele or varicosis of the family of plexus. Another one is alternative venous channel will be present in the cremastic veins. So in the arterial supply of the testis, we discussed about the collaterals. Collaterals come from the cremastic artery, which is a branch of inferior gastric artery, which is called as external spermatic artery. And collaterals from the vas deferens, arterial vas deferens. So automatically the veins also will be there, which accompany these vessels. So the varicocele may be having dilated veins in the cremastic muscle also. So in certain cases, clinically presenting varicocele will be having the varicosis in the cremastic veins, not in the pancreatic plexus. But clinically they appear as though they are true varicoceles. Muscles already I told you, cremaster for protection and the dot is for the thermostatic function. Etiology of this varicocele is, it is a common condition. 15 to 20% of the males, especially tall people, will be having some varicose of the pancreatic plexus, mostly asymptomatic, and 90% of them will be seen on the left side. 90% will be seen on the left side. Some of them are related to cremastic veins. So in case of primary varicocele, where the cause is not found, the cause is absence or incompetence of the terminal valves, where these veins end in the venous system. Secondary varicocele is a result of obstruction to the left vein, obstruction to the left genital vein because of the tumor or following nephrectomy. So on the left side, because the vein directly enters into the left renal vein, the hypernephroma or cancer of the kidney, if it extends into the vascular system and comes into the left renal vein, it blocks the opening of the left side vein, resulting in varicocele formation. So in a young man who has got left-sided varicocele of recent onset, you must always inquire about hematuria and loin pain. If there is hematuria, you must always investigate the left kidney for presence of the tumor. And before operating on the left-sided varicocele, it is a must to examine the abdomen by ultrasound. The left kidney must be examined, at least by ultrasound or IVP must be done before operating on the left vein. And one more critical point is the secondary varicoceles, they result from obstruction to the venous system. So whenever you elevate the scrotum, it should not collapse. In primary variety, in supine position, if you elevate the scrotum, the veins gets collapsed and the cord becomes normal. Whereas in secondary varicocele, it will not collapse because there is obstruction. You must always examine the patient in standing to diagnose varicocele and supine to confirm whether it is primary or whether it is secondary. These two maneuvers must always be done. And following nephrectomy, already you have ligated the left renal vein, so it results in the varicocele. Why more common on the left side? The explanations given are left vein joins the renal vein perpendicularly. Next, left renal artery arches over the vein, compressing it in 16% of the cases. And loaded sigmoid colon also presses the testicular vein on the left side, resulting in varicocele. These are the anatomical explanations given why these is more common on the left side. Clinical features are most of these varicoceles are asymptomatic. If they have become symptomatic, it is usually seen in adolescence or early adulthood, where the boy has become apprehensive. He may complain of annoying dragging discomfort in standing position. Annoying and dragging discomfort. That will be drag on the, there is a pull on the testes because of the laminiform plexus, the testicular blood is not cooled properly. So reflexly the dartos muscle relaxes and brings the testis away from the body. So the testis hangs down, lower down, which will result in pull or drag on the spermatic cord. So the boy complains of dragging discomfort. And it is not severe enough. It's only annoying, disturbing to the boy, not it made him to suffer. It's only annoying, little type of dragging discomfort, which is worse on standing at the end of the day. This is the only complaint the boy gives. On examination, you find the affected scrotum hangs lower down than the opposite side. If you feel the cord, the venous plexus feels like a bag of worms, like a bag of worms. Thrill-like cough impulse will be felt. After the cough, you can feel the thrill. And in primary cases, if you elevate the scrotum in supine position, the veins gets collapsed. In the early stages, the testis is normal. Whereas in long-standing cases, there will be subnormal size of the testis, a little less than its fellow. The testis will be a little less soft than its fellow will be present. There may be partial atrophy. In long-standing cases, there may be partial atrophy of this testis will be present. So you can see the dilated veins in the left side of the scrotum, and you can also see a bulge here, which is nothing but the hernia, inguinal hernia. Here you can see clearly the well dilated veins. If you feel these veins, they will give you a sensation of bag of worms feel. Bag of worms feel. Clinically, you can grade the varicocele. Grade 1 being impalpable. It's only observed on ultrasound. When the person is complaining of discomfort on the left side, or when the patient comes with little lesser size of the testes, or if the patient comes for infertility, oligozoospermia, decreased sperm count, in such cases, we subject him to the Doppler study of the scrotum. In such cases, you can see the dilatation of the veins. The size of the veins is more than 4 mm. 4 mm, you diagnose the varicocele. So if they are less than 2 mm, they are normal. 2 to 4 mm is doubtful. So depending on the size of this diameter of the veins, you can diagnose the varicocele. That is grade 1. Clinically not palpable, but found on investigations. Grade 2 is palpable. So when you feel the cord, they are palpable as bag of worms and cough like thrill-like cough impulse will be present. They are palpable. Grade 3 is they are visible from a distance. Visible, but they are great. The only investigation needed is ultrasonography or Doppler study of the scrotum, where you can do there is some disturbance. So ultrasound can diagnose even small varicocele. Is here, you meet the app on your phone. Thank you. Ultrasound is also needed in recent onset of varicoceles to rule out the left renal tumor. So in these two situations, we need the help of the ultrasound. So you can see the dilated veins in the ultrasound. This is the kidney, the testicular substance. These are the dilated veins. And there is varicocele and spermatogenesis. Because this is a common condition, whenever the person comes with oligozoospermia, The first thing we will diagnose is the abnormality of the testicular veins, that is varicocele. Though they may be connected or they may be not connected to the condition, we have to rule out. The circumstances where we diagnose varicocele in case of infertility or when the person comes with oligozoospermia. And even with the presence of the varicocele, some people will father a child easily. Some people, even without varicocele, they will be having oligozoospermia. The interlink between the varicocele and spermatogenesis is very difficult to prove. If the varicocele is present, it is better to correct this varicocele and then wait for the spermatogenesis. The temperature and testis. So in the context of these varicoceles, the testicular temperature is very important. Normal testicular temperature will be 2.5 degrees centigrade below the rectal temperature. So this lower temperature, cooler temperature will help the spermatogenesis. If there is varicocele, varicocele warms the testes, increases the testicular temperature, and this will hamper the spermatogenesis. Though the evidence is lacking, we think that the varicocele, in the presence of partial testicular atrophy and oligozoospermia, we attribute the cause to be the varicocele and try to correct it. Coming to the management or treatment, if it is asymptomatic, no operation is needed. If it is completely asymptomatic, assure the boy and don't reveal the condition to the person. If you say once you say there is varicocele, automatically he becomes symptomatic. So if there is no problem, you simply examine him, no problem, keep fine. And if it is symptomatic, there is disturbing pain will be there. In such cases, some intervention to block these varicocele veins is needed. So nowadays, you have got the facility of interventional radiology. You can embolize the gonadal vein percutaneously. So you enter the femoral vein, go through the iliacs, infravena cava. On the right side from the infravena cava, you enter the gonadal vein, again come down and inject the coil or foam or clot at the testicular vein close to the testis. So it will block the varicocele or varicose veins. On the left side, from the infravena cava, you go into the left renal vein, descend into the left gonadal vein and inject the embolus. So this can be easily done. Embolization can be done with the help of the interventional radiology. And surgical ligation is needed if the embolization fails. For some reasons you are unable to embolize it, then you go for surgical means. Embolization is not possible. And recurrence after embolization, which occurs in 20% of the cases. You have embolized it, in 20% the varicocele has recurred. So in such cases, we go for surgical ligation of the veins. So the surgeries available for varicocele are, apart from embolization, you have got ligation and excision through the scrotum. This is the classical operation. We expose the card at the root of the scrotum. We separate the testicular artery and one or two veins along with the artery, and remaining pamping complexes and cord are excised for the segment. 1 inch segment is excised and both cut ends are tied together. So this will remove the extra dilated veins obstructing or occluding the varicocele. The second one is Palamas operation. This is the operation done extraperitoneally above the internal ring. You incise, you give an incision just like for appendectomy. You split the muscles, but don't open the peritoneum. Extraperitoneally, you strip off the peritoneum medially and at the brim of the pelvis. The brim of the pelvis, you identify the ureter. Just by the side of the ureter, you can see the separate bunch of vessels, genital vessels, artery and vein will be there. There you leave behind one vein and you ligate the one or two extra veins. This is called as extraperitoneal ligation of the gonadal veins known as Palmos operation. Palmos operation. You can do this same procedure, extraperitoneal ligation, by laparoscopy also. So laparoscopically, without incision, we can ligate these veins. So these are the studies available for treating the varicose embolization, ligation and excision, and Palmos operation, either open or laparoscopy. This is percutaneous embolization of the gonadal veins. So you can, left side varicose is there, the right side they have entered the femoral vein, then iliacs, vena cava, left renal vein. From there they have descended down into the gonadal vein. And here they have injected deployed the coil here. This coil will block this varicose case. Subsequently, the blood in the varicose, because it is not flowing, it gets thrombosed. And slowly, all these which they get fibrous, result in a cord-like structures. So the varicose is completely obliterated. After this, the blood from the testis, there will be arterial flow. The blood from the testis will drain through the collateral veins, through the cremastic plexus, or veins accompanying the artery to the vas, etc. So venous supply will not be a problematic. Slowly, these collaterals will dilate and lead to the drainage of the testis. This is a percutaneous procedure, interventional radiology. If it is successful, it is very easy. It can be done as a OP procedure. Patient can get the procedure done and go home. So coming to the summary, varicose is a common condition. 90% are left-sided. It may occur in a later life, may indicate presence of renal tumor. So left varicose of short duration on the left side with hematuria, with some discomfort in the loin, you must always suspect the tumor in the kidney, left kidney. Though it is rare, but it's a dangerous condition. You should not miss it. So examine the left kidney, confirm whether it is normal, then only you go for surgery on the left side. They are usually asymptomatic and rarely need treatment. The first line treatment nowadays is embolization when the patient is symptomatic. If this fails, you can go for surgical treatment. Nowadays, with the increasing incidence of the infertility, male infertility is increasing nowadays. So the varicocele is gaining more interest. So if the varicocele is the cause for the male infertility, you may have to ligate those veins. So most often, 1/3 of the cases, the veins will be present in the cremastic muscle. So you have to ligate the cremastic veins also along with the family complexes. The procedure for this is called as CDVL, cremastic disruption vein ligation, the procedure that is done for varicocele causing male infertility. So with this, we stop here. The next class we will talk about another common condition, hydrocele. So 5 more minutes are left. If you have any doubts regarding these topics, you can call me. Any doubts regarding this? Yes. Sir, finished, sir. Only 4 minutes more. And if there are no doubts, we'll stop the class here and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nagabanaya.
Thank you, sir.
It is voice and video clarity is very good. Audio and video very good.
Thank you, sir.
Students, make use of this facility, and any queries, please contact Dr. Nagamani sir. Or if anything, put in the chat box so that the queries will be answered. If not, thank you very much, Dr. Nagamani sir. And tomorrow there will be class. So every day there will be class from 10 to 11 in surgery department.
Okay, I will take, sir, no problem.
Yeah. Harish, please follow up and fix up the class for tomorrow also, but Dr. Nagamani sir, he wants to take it.
Okay,
So
sir.
all students, today's participation, 201 students have been online out of 225. About 90% students are logged in. So again, I'm reiterating the attendance is complete. This attendance is going to continue